Welcome to the first Luxembourg Tomorrow panel discussion. I just thought I'd give you a quick update as to what we're doing here, although you're probably read my email. So Luxembourg Tomorrow is a series of discussions and initiatives aimed at amplifying Luxembourg as a hub for business and finance. It's a way for us to showcase our thought leadership, our talent pool, and our potential for growth. Talking of thought leadership, who do we have on stage with us? We have leaders who very kindly offer their time, thoughts, and vision. We have Emanuele, CEO of HSBC, Darren, Anderson Weiss, managing partner at Anderson Weiss. We have Francesca from UBS and Robert from EY, who very, very kindly offered their time and thoughts, ideas with us. Talent pool, who do we have in the audience? We have people from INSEAD, Business School, CFA Society, and some hopefully potential future speakers. Let me give you a quick walkthrough of what the format for the evening is going to be. For the first 45 minutes, we're going to be doing a panel discussion where we talk about macroeconomic trends and its impact on Luxembourg, on our lives. From there on, we'll do a Q&A session where you guys can ask your questions, about 20 minutes, followed by which we'll head to the bar for cocktails and cafes. Does that sound okay?
Yeah,
Super. One last thing, in terms of the question format, what we're doing is we're following a bit of a funnel view where we start off broad, the global perspective, macro trends. We broaden it down to, we narrow it down to the country level. We talk about how it's going to impact Luxembourg. We narrow it down further to the industry level. We talk about banking, consulting, recruitment, how it's going to affect these industries. And then finally, we go and take a look at the organization level. So with that, let's get started. So what we wanted to do is, most of the discussion is going to be focused forward-looking on the macroeconomic factors that are impacting us, but we thought we could start off with a slightly positive note looking at the recent past. So we're going to start off with by looking at our unemployment rate. So for the first time, we have an all-time low unemployment rate of 6.6% of our workforce. The number of unemployed people in the Eurozone has fallen to below 11 million for the first time. So I'm going to direct the first question to you, Emanuele. If I can ask you, how have you gotten into today's ultra-competitive recruitment market?
First of all, good evening everyone, and thank you, Prash, for putting together this event. It's obviously a pleasure and an honor to be part of a very distinguished panel. So, from my perspective, the way I will address this question, disruption brings change, and change brings opportunity. I will walk you briefly some of the events that have characterized my career to explain this a little bit better. I mean, for those of you that were around, I started introduction of the euro, changes Y2K when we had to be Y2K compliant, so a few years back, where there was a high request for people working, for example, in technology or highly knowledgeable around FX and so on. You then, I had to go through the 2008 financial crisis, where clearly a lot of the banks didn't manage their capital in a very effective way. Unfortunately, there were very bad consequences for some of them. But again, in that period, I highlighted the need to have a more specialized workforce in capital and liquidity management. If you look closer to what we are today, we had probably a lot of events, external events that are impacting us. I mean, I only moved to Luxembourg 6-8 months ago. Before that, I was in London, so I was part of the decision, the political decision of exit the EU, and that clearly generated a lot of work on the legal front, change of legal entity structure, requirement to execute changes. We then had a pandemic where everyone had to work from home from one day to another, so a lot of investment in IT, and now the most recent one, the very sad conflict in Ukraine, which obviously has highlighted the need again for tighter regulation and application of sanctions. So why I'm saying this, there are a lot of opportunities. Clearly during this time, if you think about it, business as usual work has not disappeared. So there's a lot of work that we need to sustain on a daily basis to support our clients. But in addition to that, there's been a lot of other variation that people have to adapt. So the opportunities come on the front. And my kind of advice here is really, is in the ever-changing market, which is changing very, very fast. I think what I tell people is three things. One is, keep innovating yourself. it's learn new skills. It's important to learn new skills if you want to stay abreast of the market. And thirdly, try to understand the market. The market is evolving. Understand what are the key drivers, what are the key changes, and then adapt yourself and your style. So with crisis, there are opportunities.
That's great advice, Emanuele. Thank you very much. Darren, would you like to add anything to that?
Did you keep it on?
Yes.
Is it still on? Okay, good. And thank you for having me, Prash, and everybody here. I think I'll take it from the fact that, the unemployment rates are at a historical low. We have Laurent from ADEM Employer Services in the room, who will probably tell us exactly that information as well. And it's a little bit, it's strange, isn't it? Because today it was announced that we've reached 8 billion people on the planet. Yeah, 8 billion people, and we don't have enough people. I can see somebody at the back, they're saying, where the fuck are they? I don't know. Yeah, where are they? Where are they? And I think COVID has definitely a part to play on the fact that we don't have enough staff. And some of the trends that are happening around the world is one in particular that if you looked at almost every country, after COVID, most of the over 55s did not return to work. Yeah, they left the workplace. That left a big hole in a lot of those countries that we rely on for staff. And now they have a choice. They have a choice whether to come to Luxembourg or not. And a lot of the countries are asking them to stay. Now, we're not going to grow ourselves. I think the rate of babies we're having in Luxembourg is 1.4 per female. So we either need to love each other a little bit more and have some more children. That's going to take some time. So we do have to go out there and attract more people and make Luxembourg a more compelling place to come live and work. And I know we're going to be talking and touching on that at the moment. But I think one of the major things now is people have a choice to stay where they are in the countries where they're from, because there is so much need everywhere around the world.
Makes sense. Thank you, Darren. I'm proud to say that I've done my part with my 2 kids. Moving to a slightly more forward-looking perspective, we want to talk about the current ongoing macroeconomic factors. So we have inflation, we have the energy crisis, we have a polarized political environment, fears of a recession. So my next question is related to you, Robert. Which of these macroeconomic factors do you think would affect Luxembourg the most and its business environment?
Sure. Well, thank you very much. And again, thank you for having me here this evening. So I always think with this information, it's always important not to kind of accept it prima facie and dig a little bit more into the information. You take a perfect example is the commentary on population, the commentary on unemployment rates. Yes, we have the lowest rate of unemployment ever in the EU. But we don't have the lowest long-term unemployment rate ever in the EU. Nor do we have the lowest rate of unemployment in rural areas. And at the same time, we have more people in third-level education than we've ever had in the past. So, wonderful statistic, but I think the solution is digging a little bit more deeply into the facets of that statistic, and I think we will find some interesting things there. Now, I think your question is a pleasant one. You've given me all the, I would say, the challenges of the day, and there definitely are challenges. As I see it, Luxembourg, as we all know, is the largest financial centre in the world outside of the US. It serves as a gateway to European and indeed global financial markets, and it is a key piece of infrastructure for global financial institutes that we all know as household names. Now, given the diversity of asset classes, the diversity of industries that we serve, I would say generally we're pretty well diversified, i.e. one industry will struggle, one asset class will struggle, but others will pick up the pace. And history has, to some extent, proved that to be true. Now, that doesn't mean that we're capable of absorbing all of those shocks at the same time without being, as we have always been, innovative and adapting to our environments. Now, if I go through a few of those points, and we talk about the energy crisis, without doubt the energy crisis is impacting the real economy. Businesses are less profitable, households have less discretionary income. We talk about polarization in the political landscape. That is causing various nation states to be more insular with their tax with their regulatory policies, etc., etc., and that will have an impact without any doubt. What I'm most, and now those are, I would say, topics that we need to, they need to inform our thoughts and they need to inform our strategy, but I'm most concerned about inflation, because if we look here at Luxembourg, as I see it, our number one challenge is to retain our competitiveness. We are all, to some extent, in the business of providing services to our global organizations, providing services to third parties, etc. We form a part of the infrastructure that ultimately serves global financial markets. For Luxembourg to retain that position, we have to be constantly mindful of our competitiveness. So when we look at indexation, of course, the cost of talent is a key element of that. So are other factors, the manner in which we digest and communicate regulation, the manner in which we formulate tax policy, the manner in which we formulate and communicate housing policy, the manner in which we take stock of education, how we want that to take shape in the local landscape. So as I look at it, and I appreciate it's a little bit broader than inflation, but as I see it, it's a competitiveness point. And that's where I see the key challenges for Luxembourg. The others, I think we all have to contend with those equally. I'm sure we'll find a solution to the competitiveness point too, but I think we need to be constantly reflective of that point, because that's what a winning team does, isn't it? You're constantly reflective of items that may diminish your relative attraction.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, I think we're definitely headed towards interesting times where we navigate through these relatively turbulent waters. Speaking of keeping competitive, the next question is directed at you, Francesca. Like, how does your organization handle the transition to working from home, remote working, given everything that we've navigated through in the recent past?
Thanks. It worked very well. After the first week of stress, in which we had to prepare all staff for the employees for the home working, and I can tell you that it was a lot of stress. Even if I cannot complain, because compared to other companies like central administrations, we are not in the day-to-day operational work, so we don't calculate the NAV of the funds. But anyway, it worked very well. We had to change our way of working, because finally we continued to launch funds. We took even some important strategic decisions at the level of Luxembourg, like for example the fact that the management company has been appointed as the hub of the European one. We have continued to hire people, but the way of communication had to change, because at a certain time we had to keep the same level than in the past. So what we did, just to show you some examples, we had implemented some daily calls with the direct reporting lines. We had organized few roundtables, twice, even 3 times per week, but just to give an update, nothing prepared in advance, more with a standard agenda and Q&A session, and also because we had to present the new joiners. And finally, we have established a sort of regular meetings with the different teams at the level of the senior management. And by the way, this is something which we decide to keep now. So some decisions taken at the level of the communication have been now implemented, for the moment, on a permanent basis.
Okay, great. I think those are very valid points, which can also serve for organizations as a future roadmap, as initiatives that they could launch. So I think, yeah, very, very, very pertinent. Thank you.
Probably the difference with now is that there are some challenges with this home working policy, which is not related to the companies, but more to the restrictions which you observe in the country. So we know that it's not because of Luxembourg. We know that there are some discussions with the different countries like Germany, France, and Belgium. But the fact that there is a limited number of days for home working for the cross-border employees, this is a big challenge. And back to your points concerning how we attract the talents, this is an issue for the moment. We need to find a solution.
Yeah, makes complete sense. Emanuele, can I redirect the same question to you in terms of how is HSBC dealing with working from home, remote working, and all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you the global view. I mean, the group has taken a very clear position on working from home and flexible working, and they're 100% supporting. I mean, just to, basically, if you remember, if you rewind back March 2020, I still remember it was a Thursday, and when to send back home 90% of our workforce. We are talking about 190,000 people globally. And the logistic operation between the Thursday and the Sunday of getting everyone operational, like Francesca said, was immense. I mean, they literally had to hire planes to ship out laptops, things that you never think about, people that couldn't work in the office anymore, particularly in the offshore center. But by Monday, we started working different setup, different way of working, but I would say that customer disruption has been minimal. So after a period of adjustment, again, back to Francesca's point, people had to adapt, clients had to adapt, but it worked very well. So the position is now, imagine if we asked all of our employees to go back to work in an office 5 days a week, it would be a complete lack of trust. And that's the key message that we're giving to our people. So from a global perspective, we are definitely adopting a flexible work solution. Personally, I'm a strong believer that we need to find the right balance. We definitely need to allow people to work from home, but at the same time, I think being in the office brings back certain things that we lost completely. I mean, we're talking about new joiners. If new joiners, not just the people that are starting their career, but we're talking about people that are joining from different organizations. You want to be able to them to breathe the culture of the organization that have just joined, learn from people with more experience. And something that I really missed during this period was the interaction with the people that I would bump in a coffee machine or talk to them in the corridor, people from other business area, which good ideas, collaboration come from, but you wouldn't interact necessarily if you were working from home because you were really focused on your day-to-day and direct team. So our position is definitely finding the right balance of giving the staff flexibility, but also have sometimes in the office to invest back into the company. For Luxembourg, again, I don't want to repeat what has already been said, it's clearly a slightly different situation where we do need to find a solution because it deviates from, there's probably a couple of markets I can think of Luxembourg, maybe Switzerland, but Luxembourg probably is the biggest example of challenges with the cross-border working. And we're trying to come to a solution. And it's not simple because clearly we have some responsibility towards the government, the employees have got their responsibility towards the tax, and there's no easy solution. But if we want to retain attractiveness in the market, we must find one because if 54 offices globally HSBC work flexibly and Luxembourg doesn't, then it's not good. We need to make sure that we come up with some solution.
Yeah, thank you for that, Emanuele. So this basically opens me up to think about where our path lies in the future. Where are we headed in terms of the future of work? Can I direct that question at you, Robert? What will the new normal look like 3 to 5 years from now? Where are we headed?
Yeah, we can try. We can try. I think you'll get divergent views on that one. Like, I suppose on that particular topic, I always think context is king. Any conversation that you have on that topic, devoid of context, is relatively meaningless. And I'm a big believer in the built environment, generally. So we can take a simple anecdote to prove that. Beer has been available in cans for over 150 years. But the preferred place of consumption remains the bar. Why is that? We can drink the stuff at home. Why is it that we prefer to go to a bar to drink beer or whatever else it is you like to drink? So I'm a big believer in the necessity for community and all of the benefits that it brings, including the learning aspect of that. So in terms of the future of work, as I would look at it, it's a question of who we will employ, what we will ask them to do, and where we will ask them to physically be. In terms of who we will employ, I think that we're all living in a world now that has more codified information than has ever existed ever. So the exercise of our children sitting in classrooms and learning all the rivers or all the mountains or all the counties in any given country, it's quite nonsensical, isn't it? It might be amusing, you know, it might keep the children under control for a period of time, but I don't think it in any way is preparing them for the world we expect them to live in. We need to develop thinkers. We need to develop people who critically analyze things. And so with that, my hope would be we're looking at educating our children and our future graduates in more critical disciplines, literature, the classics, philosophy, of course finance to an extent, but everything has to have a critical nature because we need people to ask questions. So I think that that's quite key. In terms of what we will ask these people to do, the processing of information, to a certain extent, we've got that one cracked, don't we? You know, we've looked at digitalization, we've looked at IA, robotization, etc. So people will process far fewer amounts of information. We're going to ask them to analyze things. So we need to ensure that all of our organizations put learning right at the center of their strategy and they adopt a growth mindset, meaning that we're no longer willing to simply accept the way things used to be. We need to be critically analyzing things. And I think that's crucial because we're facing more change than we've ever faced in the past. And lastly, where we will ask people to work, I think it's very important that each industry, each organization adopts a configuration that's best for them. If I look at my own industry, so public accounting, professional services, it's my personal belief that you cannot possibly be properly trained in that discipline if you're not fully consumed by the environment early in your career. So you're in an environment where your work is being checked, not every day, but every 15 minutes. You've got a senior looking over your back, yeah, that one doesn't work, you need to look at this formula, have you tried this? You need that level of intensity early in your career to prepare you for the next steps. Now, if you're a 20-year professional who knows every single thing about what it is they do, yes, it makes perfect sense that you can work from your holiday home in Portugal or wherever you want to work. But if you're a new graduate, it's my personal belief that you deserve to be fully immersed in a very nurturing learning environment with people around you. So maybe you have different views, Francesca?
No, I want to just to add a few points. I completely agree with you. I personally think that we need people who think differently. So the fact that until now we wanted to have only people coming from the financial sector for work in the financial sector was a mistake. Just let's attract people who think differently, able to challenge as well the senior management. And sometimes it's quite difficult. So we need a change of mindset at the bottom, but also at the level of the top. Because if I take my organization as example, with BS, you can imagine that we have, I don't know how many procedures or policies. I'm not able to tell the number. So it's quite difficult to change even one comma of these procedures. We need people who accept to be challenged, to review the processes, to review the procedures, to review the policies, and to say, okay, maybe this guy is young, he's coming from the next generation, but he's right, because he comes with a different view.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I guess a critical analysis of our current processes, including regulatory environment, will help us move forward from this. Darren, can I come to you and leverage your vantage point of recruitment across, which gives you a view of the entire industry to give us the same?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, and of course, you know, I've been in the game for 26 years, and these are the best conditions for employees ever. Whether it's going to get any better than this, I don't know. I'm probably the only person in Luxembourg that hugs the regulator when they walk into a room, because without substance, I probably wouldn't have a job. But I think that, you know, the 4 to 5 year, looking ahead, what the workforce will look like. I don't think technology is going to really change so much. I mean, we've been promised so much. I'm a teenager of the 80s, Back to the Future, still waiting for my hoverboard. It should have been arrived in 2015, it didn't. But I think, we're just used to maybe such small incremental change, we don't notice the technological changes. But also to touch on what Robert mentioned about that workforce that it is not working, that's idle at the moment, that needs to be upskilled. But also we have a duty, I suppose, for the existing workforce to make sure they are being upskilled as we speak. So those that are not on ESG topics right now, it's probably wise to maybe take a course in something or other, because this is going to be the, if it isn't already, something that's going to be of value. But I think that where we're going as a society would be interesting, and we've probably got a bunch of economists that will shout me down here as well in the room. But I think this obsession with growth is unhealthy. The obsession with GDP growth every quarter, every year is unhealthy. Capitalism is unhealthy. Where is the planet going? And I think that we are starting to see people come out with degrowth strategies, usually from companies that are, of course, destroying the planet, and they realise actually they've got to stop doing that, and the only way out of that is to act upon degrowth strategies. So what's enough? What's enough? And we can do it as a country level on GDP. We put it on companies. How much do I need to grow quarter on quarter, year on year? We put it on ourselves. How much do I need my lifestyle to increase quarter on quarter, year on year? Questions maybe for that other population, the philosophers, not just the finance guys that we usually hire and see in Luxembourg. Maybe these people have some of the better answers for us for the future. I do think that we will see, of course, the flexibility, the hybrid work. It is here and it's here to stay. But I also agree it's not going to be 5 days a week. And I'm getting actually people that last year moved to purely remote roles are now calling me and saying, I don't like it, I thought I did, it's too long, I miss people, I miss the social interaction, I need to come back. And especially for my career, the visibility part, they're not visible to anybody. So be mindful of how much time we take off. It's going to be a European level that decides how much time we can spend in other countries with the funds of the heirs, and that's going to be a social security issue. Currently 25%, which is pretty much whatever it's going to be, it's 1 day a week. There is rumour that that's going to change, maybe in that 5-year span to 40%, which would be 2 days a week. Now, those of you who are hiring or looking for work, if you haven't got hybrid, if you haven't got work-life balance, if you haven't got flexibility in your advert, half the people won't apply to those opportunities. So it's here to stay. It's a change of mindset.
Okay, I think those are very interesting observations. I love how you focus on these specific parameters that are so valuable to employees and potential employees. How would you juxtapose that against us trying to bring in talent to Luxembourg? If you were a recruiter or a firm in Luxembourg trying to bring people in, how would you go about it?
Yeah, well, I think there's two prongs to bringing people into Luxembourg. And there's the experienced hires, and then there's those with little experience or no experience at all. And I think from my experience, it is really hard to drag kicking and screaming experienced people to Luxembourg. If I approach them for the first time and talk to them about Luxembourg, I've got to go through a whole world of education about what Luxembourg is and the opportunities here. Where I see the more experienced hires coming from are rotations from some of the large international companies. You're a great example of somebody coming from HSBC from London. And I think we want to rely more on those organisations themselves having some career programs for those experienced hires. And also experienced hires, they come with roots. If I use the analogy of a plant, fully grown plant, and these roots are already grown. And some of these roots could be, let's say, for example, they have children a certain age. Now, earlier this year, I had 2 experienced hires that were supposed to start in Luxembourg. Their children at a certain age could not find an international school. They only spoke English. Now, I know that's improving in the local system as well, but it's not going fast enough. So, and we have let's say, the accompanying partner, which is always a challenge. And I can't tell you how many times I get called from somebody that has found a fabulous role, let's say at Amazon, and I get the partner call me up and say, Darren, my partner's starting in Amazon in January, you know, I've been told to call you because you'll be able to find me a role. And of course I'll say, well, okay, now what do you do? I'm a marine biologist. And, you know, the amount of times I could just ask companies to please ask what do the partners do and what their expectations are. And I think there's a massive opportunity for us to bring, in fact, I have the grand title of Luxembourg Internship Capital of the World, where we see graduates sitting around drinking coffee, probably beer, maybe, and they're saying, you know, top 3 places, destinations of choice, one of them has to be Luxembourg. It has to be Luxembourg because of the cosmopolitan nature. If you're a female and you want to be on public transport at 12 midnight, you want to be in Luxembourg and not London or Paris. The tiny gender pay gap we have, the free public transport at source. There's so many benefits for a graduate. I know we're going to talk on cost of living a little bit later, so I'll save that topic. But this is where I do think that we can attract more interns that come to Luxembourg, that stay in Luxembourg, and return as graduates or graduates. And we have some initiatives working with alumni out there, and also chambers of commerce. So we have some ideas that we're already talking at a government level about. Is that right, Andrea?
Super. Thank you, Darren. Can I direct the same question at you, Francesca? What do you do to bring talent to Luxembourg? But let me expand the scope a bit more. How do you also then retain talent in Luxembourg? How do you keep them happy?
We do a lot of things. The first one, in terms of hiring, now we hire everywhere. So we don't publish, for example, the job descriptions only in Luxembourg, but we go to Italy, we go to Germany, we go everywhere. And we try, as with all arguments just mentioned by Darren, to attract talent to Luxembourg. And yes, Darren, I confirm that the cost of living can be an issue for something. And then cross sectors. So we don't hire anymore only the financial sector. I can give you some examples. My husband is an engineer, so it still doesn't understand what is the oversight which you perform at the level of the management company. He needs to see a product in order to really say, okay, today I did something. But when we decided to invest into some funds years ago, before the crisis, I had to explain how we calculate some risk indicators, and he got it immediately like this. So which means that yes, we can hire people from different sectors. If you look, for example, at one position of project manager, you don't need to become from to be in the financial sector. As well, a risk manager. We know that there are some regulatory roles, conducting officer, compliance officer. That's a different story. But we can learn. This is something which you keep in mind. And then you are right. Once we have those talents, we have to keep them. And I think that we should split into parts. There are the expectations of the young generation and how to keep the more senior talents. So we don't act in the same way. At the level of the next generation, it's really important to understand what are their expectations. I'm not saying that I agree with everything because they want more flexibility, they want a good balance, professional and private life, they want to have the possibility to stop working for 6 months, to go to Australia, to come back and to have exactly the same role. But finally, we need to find a way to work with them because we need them. And the reason for which I'm the different panels, Alfie, next generation, and so on, because I really needed to understand what is their point of view. Development, it's important to this coaching program, talent program, and conversation about the career as well. So when, for example, they accept working for a big group, they can eventually decide to change location after a couple of years. We need to be ready to support them, otherwise we lose the talent. It's better if they move to another location. Cross division as well. I have few people, now we have a few people from global wealth management and we are in asset management. So this is open mind. It's very, very important if you want to keep them.
Super. I've seen how active you are with these discussions, so I think it's very commendable that you put in so much effort to get perspectives from employees around you and the younger generation.
Indeed, because we are hiring. To be honest, I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere because we are challenging in finding good people, and they challenge me as well. I had a role for an associate director weeks ago, and he wanted to meet the CEO. Okay, let's meet the CEO. After the moment in which we decide to send the offer, so he met the CEO and he told me, look, now I did it my interviews, 6 or 7, this is UBS style, why I should come to you? Can you please sell the company? It was the first time, and I had to sell the company. Finally, just for information, he decided to accept a job in Paris because he was living in France and he did not want to come to Luxembourg for this day.
No, I hear you. Thank you for sharing that story. Darren, can I come back to you for the retention piece of things? There was this trend that over the last few months, especially during the pandemic, they termed it the Great Resignation. Did we see any of that in Luxembourg? If so, how did it manifest? If not, why not? What do we do well? And also to complete the loop of the question, from the retention standpoint, what can we do better to retain our talent here?
Yeah, we did see a lot of movement. And I think, I mean, one thing I probably want to stress a little bit is I'm not convinced it's a generational thing that we all want different things necessarily. I mean, there's a book recently been released, The Generation Myth, which talks about the fact that all of us want different type of leadership these days, at a country level, at a company level. We want that empathic leadership style. That and I don't think that is just for the young uns; it's for the old uns as well. That's what we want. I think in terms of what happened in Luxembourg is because of the enormous amount of opportunities and choice, and because of people like me pestering people every day to change opportunities. Because I think the one thing I never hear from, because of course I only see one side of the coin. Nobody calls me up and says, Darren, just thought I'd give you a call to say I'm so happy in my role. I'm getting paid, I think I'm getting paid too much. I love my boss. Company is a dream. I never get that call, of course. I get the call that says the opposite of these things. And I think that a lot of it is down to making sure that the right leadership is there. But there was so much choice that people did take the opportunity to change for money. And in fact, this is probably, to be frank, it's probably the first time people have been moving for money and money alone. It's not a great motivator for a recruiter to work with people that want to only move for money, because guess what? They get a counter offer for money. There needs to be a more compelling reason to move than just for money, because they usually stay in the same job. And however, once I've really asked a few targeted questions, it's not usually the money. It's not usually they're not paid enough. They're usually not valued enough. And it's a big difference. And once you get to the crux of that, these people are prepared to move for the same money or even less if they feel more valued at another organisation. So there's a big emphasis now on the type of leadership skills that leadership competencies we've had in the past to what we want today. So I think that a lot of organisations are taking a good hard look at themselves and looking at their leadership and asking themselves, are my managers valuing these teams? So I think that's one of the key takeaways that I see.
I think that's fantastic advice. I hope every employer here gets to hear that. Just to continue the same retention vein and bring that to the heart of one of our primary issues here in Luxembourg, cost of living. To what extent does the high cost of living in Luxembourg affect talent acquisition? And if the impact is material, which most of us agree it is, what can we do to improve that?
Well, I mean, I always push back when somebody says it's expensive to live here. I push back because, even this year, the Mercer Cost of Living City Index puts Luxembourg City at 52nd most expensive city in the world. Of course, it's not the 100th, but it's certainly not anywhere near what your disposable income will provide you in Brussels, in Paris, or London. It's more expensive. Luxembourg is not an expensive city. What it's become a destination of choice. And that's why we're in the situation we are. Now, of course, there's one particular elephant in the room, and that's accommodation. Now, I think the things that we would like to see, or I would like to see more of, certainly for the younger population, when we talk about these interns and graduates, is more co-living. Yeah, I mean, it's abhorrent to a lot of people, probably at my age, but I remember, graduating in London, and I lived in a house, 8 rooms, I was in one of them, we had 1 bathroom, I think you have to have 2 now. And I look back and I think, that must have been horrible, but it wasn't at the time, because I was a grad and I didn't know any better, and I had a lot of fun. And I met some friends, usually waiting for the toilet. But, co-living is something we're going to have to get used to, and certainly graduates are going to have to get used to it, interns are going to have to get used to it in Luxembourg. We've matured into this destination of choice. I think, of course, for the mature population, buying a house, buying an apartment is incredibly difficult, certainly on your own, to do that. And I think I saw somewhere, maybe Emery, was it in the Lux Times, I may have seen this, where if we were able to put one level on every existing apartment block across Luxembourg, we wouldn't have a housing crisis. Yeah? And I think that could be some of the solutions as well. I saw, is it this week that the Central Park Tower is opening? 131 floors, Central Park, New York. The tallest residential building that's ever been. Yeah, we only need one of those. We'd see it from everywhere in Luxembourg, but we probably only need one. However, the caveat to that is the top floor is going for 250 million. So, but it is New York.
Not sure. I fully agree with you on this point. Sorry, Darren. Now, on the graduate, I understand, but don't forget about the trainees. So the trainees, they don't have the same level of salary, and now we see more and more challenges in getting trainees because they have to stay here 6 months. So it's quite difficult for them to find an accommodation, even if they wanted to live with somebody else, because in most of the cases they don't know. They have to go back to the university, and usually what they do when they come back to Luxembourg, we offer a permanent contract. We don't find trainees anymore. I can tell you that many of them who we have interviewed during the last weeks, they decided not to come because of cost of life. And one, he called me and he said, look, my parents are not rich. They have to pay the apartment in Paris. I can't, because I have to stay there, I have to go back to the university. I cannot come to Luxembourg because of cost of life. And that's an issue.
Thank you for the counterpoint, Francesca. Can I come to you, Robert, for the same question? I know EY recruits a lot of people, not just in Luxembourg but across the world. What's your perspective on this discussion in terms of cost of living, real estate, and how does it impact the way you guys acquire talent?
Absolutely. Look, I think always with these things, we need to accept realities as they are today. I think any harking back to it was like that in my day, it's not really useful. We need to accept realities as they are today, and we need to design strategies accordingly. Luxembourg is a statistical anomaly in many ways, as you all know, and I think in terms of social policy and policy around people, it is the same situation. Now, one of the realities that I think needs to be considered is that a significant number of the professionals who work in Luxembourg, in our financial centre, will spend a portion, but not all of their careers here. And we need to cater for that to some extent. Now, how do we do that? We do that, of course, through education, the facilitation of people stepping into and potentially out of the local education system. In order for that to be possible, there needs to be streams that are compatible with international norms. Now, fantastic progress has been made in relation to that. There are international schools in a variety of cities across Luxembourg, so I think that's very positive. I would make the exact same commentary, and I think it's wonderful that we're all here today. I would make the exact same commentary around professional bodies, professional associations. If we were to take an example like Singapore have done a wonderful job in that regard, i.e., the Chartered Accounting qualification in Singapore is globally recognized. It's compatible with the CPA, it's compatible with the CA in Scotland, in Ireland, in England. It's universally recognized, it's accessible, it's codified. And for that reason, they have prospered. And it's a very, I would say, seamless ecosystem to step into and out of. I don't think we have the same level of compatibility, and I think that's something that we should be reflecting on. So I think that's certainly one thing, facilitating people stepping into and out of the ecosystem. We don't, you know, as has been pointed out, we don't have a captive population. If you look at places like London, you look at Dublin, you look at Paris, they have a variety of things that captivate people. You know, young people want to be there. It's relatively easy to attract people for cultural reasons, for historical reasons, etc., etc. I always think that on these topics, and we discuss similar things, of course, when we're having such conversations at Alfie, from a Luxembourg perspective, good enough is not good enough. You need to be the best, because a lot of other things are stacked against you. You know, you don't have the same historical ties to the US as Ireland might have. You know, you weren't once at the center of the universe in the way London once was, etc., etc. And so I think that good enough is not good enough. You always need to be best in class at what we do, whether it's how we understand and disseminate regulation, whether it's how we approach transport policy, housing policy. I would share Francesca's view. I moved to Luxembourg at the age of 21. I bought an apartment when I was 23. The concept of someone doing that today is absolutely alien. Co-living, I think, is a wonderful thing. Currently, we do not have regulations that would facilitate co-living in Luxembourg in the same way as we would in other member states. So it's not a question of just turning that switch on. And I think that there's a tremendous number of vacant units. So I don't believe it's purely a question of supply. You know, if we were to walk down Grand Rue, are all of the units above the retail centres occupied? I'm not sure that they all are. So I think that there's a number of things there. But that would be my big take on that, is recognising the reality that not everyone will spend their entire career here, and facilitating them stepping into and out of our financial centre in a seamless way.
Super, that's fantastic empirical observations. Thank you, Robert. Emanuele, can I come back to you? We're moving now into more of an industry level focus. Most of our audience here are professionals leading their organizations on high growth trajectories. So we're trying to think about what they can do to upskill, maintain their current levels of personal growth. So what opportunities, big market trends do you see for people to upskill and continue their fast track growth?
Thanks. I mean, talking about trends is always a kind of links back to my first answer, that you need to be adaptable, really understand what the market trends are, understand them, absorb them, and then trying to improve yourself by learning new skills. I mean, there are things that, you know, I could mention. Clearly, we are there's a very fast adoption of new technology, which people need to familiarize themselves with. Automation, new technology also means additional risks. Everyone talks about cyber risks. How can we protect our companies and our clients from there? So that's definitely another area. We talked before about ESG, clearly a very topical subject. All companies need to be involved with, and everyone needs to be familiarize themselves. So there's a lot of trends. But I think if I had to pick one, given the topic of the night, is really about leadership skills. I mean, if you want to be a successful leader in today's organization, you need to change the way you lead the business. And I mean, things that we're doing 20 years ago, 10 years ago are no longer valid. We probably touched on most of them to get tonight. But I think the key one to me is really being open to change. I mean, we talked a lot, both Francesca and Darren talked about graduate program. And I sponsor our global HSBC graduate program. And one of the things that we changed, which we found, for example, was highly effective, we always started a few years ago to pick only from top UK university, top marks, and people coming with a finance background. Clearly that wasn't working. But what we've done now, we are looking at a much more diverse workforce. We're looking at people with different degrees. We talked before, like engineering, law firms, and we also looked at a wider range of university, but also different grades. We all know that we're all been students. And there's sometimes there are clever people that don't perform as well because they prefer to party, do other things, but you don't want to miss out on those people. So what we found out, that we've got a much more diverse, effective workforce that can integrate much better within the work environment. So what I would advise everyone is really to pick up on what, and not just, Darren is right, not just the new generation, because you can't discriminate people that have been working for 20 years, but they also want different things. But times are changed, and there's a need for new leadership, and that includes, focus. If I was only focused on profit and growth, I wouldn't be able to attract the sort of talent that we're attracting today. That we're selling them. You'll be involved in ESG matter. We're really focused on diversity. We want you to work in a variety of geography and learn. So that is very, very important for me. I think leadership, learn new leadership skill in today's market is essential.
That's great advice, Emanuele. Thank you very much. Robert, can I come back to you on the same question? EY has a strong focus on continuing education and upskilling. What advice would you give to our audience on things that they can pick up based on current trends in the market?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think I would always look at that topic in two ways. One at an individual level and one at an organizational level. Like at an individual level, there is no substitute. There will never be a substitute for personal investment. So I think that anybody who wants to be exceptional at their career, you need to personally invest yourself in your goals. It helps if you're passionate about what you do, because that makes it all more meaningful. And ultimately, you need to be reading, I would say no less than 6-7 hours a week. And I'm not talking about reading your work, I'm talking about actually filling your brain with different things. So I think the concept of personal investment, there is no getting away from that. There's no substitute for that. And I don't enjoy, I think at times there can be this propensity to push this kind of, this concept of the organization will have webcasts and they'll pour the knowledge down into my mouth and it'll be there then and I'll know what I need to know. That's never been the case, and I don't imagine it will be anytime soon. We will always have to be personally responsible for our learning and take that very seriously. We touched on the topic earlier today on political polarization. I think that's why we all need to be reading everything we can get our hands on. You need to, I believe in vaccination, and I believe in vaccinating my brain as well. You need to read the bad ideas too, so you know a bad idea when you've seen one. So that's why I would be a strong advocate of that. At an organizational level, I think that the point is learning has to be at the center of the organization. It needs to form a key component of the strategy. Nowhere more so than Luxembourg, because what can you do? You can be the biggest, you can be the strongest, or you can be the fastest and the most intelligent. And I think we very much need to be in that bucket, because we're not going to be the biggest or the strongest. So you always need to be looking at how do we support our clients, our end users better. And I think you can only do that through a true mastery of your discipline. And that comes with putting learning at the very center of your organization. So they would be the two kind of pillars to that topic as I see them.
Super, that's very, very good advice. I guess given our size, if one were to dedicate themselves to continuous learning, I guess the way to the top isn't terribly far in Luxembourg relative to other markets.
Sure, well look, you can look at it that way, the way to the top, but also as I see it, the way to happiness and fulfillment, that's what we're looking for. Some people might want to be the top of something. I enjoy being good at what I do. That's how I get my fulfillment, and I think that comes through a passion of what you're doing and really investing yourself in it. And if being good at what I do brings me to a certain position, that's wonderful. I can affect more change, but if it doesn't, that will always remain the motivation.
Super. Well, thank you very much for that advice, Robert. Our final question for the day is something we're going to ask to all our panelists. Let's start with you, Robert. What advice would you give to someone aspiring to join UI?
Aspiring to join UI? Well, firstly, prepare your CV and send it to me. That's always a helpful first step. So my email is available on the website. But more broadly, I think it's exactly what I said. It's acknowledging that nobody's going to craft your career for you. You will meet wonderful people who will support you. There are facilities, there are structures in place, but you need to invest yourself in your career. You need to be passionate about what you do, and you need to be always asking questions.
Super. Thank you, Robert. Francesca, same question for you. Someone wanting to join UBS, what advice would you give?
It's a good school. Our business is extremely complex, and if you don't believe me, you can ask my regulator. So, which means that you can see different products, you can see everything, the level of complexity corporate, because we are opening branches everywhere. We have alternative funds, we have UCITS, so it's very good if you wanted to learn, with the possibility also to move to another division. And we want to be challenged. That's an important point. So we have no problem with being challenged. By the way, I had in the past a white wall, and I told the people, look, put your postscript with some ideas then we can discuss all together. They did it. And final point, which is an important element, is that even if we are part of a big group, the hub of the European management companies is here in Luxembourg. So, which means that all decisions and also all strategic decisions related to asset management are taken here in Luxembourg. We don't follow, but we are in the right seat.
Super. A lot going on in Luxembourg. Emanuele, I'm going to direct the same question at you. What wisdom would you give to someone who's trying to be the ideal candidate for HSBC?
Right, if you want to work for a large international bank with a large footprint, then of course we can offer that. Luxembourg, the way I see it, it's very universal in terms of the offering that we have. With the exception of retail bank, we cover all the business areas from private bank to the standard security services, asset management, and also corporate banking. So that there's a lot of opportunity to move across, which is very exciting. But in terms of what I would say that you really need, if you want to join a bank like HSBC, I would say 4 things. The first one is to be passionate. You really need to like what you're doing, come in with ideas. Second, you need to be open to work in a very diverse environment with a lot of different cultural background, which is fantastic, but you need to be aware that that's the way we operate. The third one, and I mentioned a few times tonight, you need to be adaptable to change. Being a large global organization, change is almost business as usual. So we change, the strategy is fairly similar, but we change a lot around the strategy. So you need to be someone who likes change and can adapt quite easily. And the final point, which is very important to me personally, is take responsibility. And one of the things that I always take to my teams is, don't look over your shoulder if something goes wrong. You need to be accountable. Think of it as if it was your own business. That's the example that I always give you. I mean, would you do this if this was your own business? And that's the type of people that I want working for me and we want working for the bank. Taking responsibility and accountability is really essential.
Super. Thank you very much, Emanuele. Darren, for you?
Yeah, so of course my take won't be about working with my company. It's a little bit too small compared to these large monsters here. But I think that, what I'd like to give some advice really, I suppose, and that is if you wanted to work with these desirable companies on the panel here, and that is to focus on what you're already doing really, and that is having a visibility plan. Being part of alumni, being part of associations, building a network before you need your network. There's nothing worse than somebody comes to me and say, now I need a network, because I'd like a new career, or I'd like a new plan. Build it before you need it, and these are the types of things you need to be doing. I mean, Prash is a great example, a visibility plan. Look at this, he's created Luxembourg Tomorrow. Not only is he known for the person you can't pronounce his name, but you're also now going to be known for this Luxembourg Tomorrow. You know, this is the sort of thing that, you know, everybody could be doing, and I know that many of the events that he's going to be hosting, come back to them, build the network, build the visibility plan. It will really help. And it's a phrase that, you know, you mentioned to me, Darren, you seem to know everybody, and I don't think I do. I just assume everybody knows me. I use this phrase, you know, it's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And Luxembourg is small enough to be known. For the right reasons, sometimes the wrong reasons. Probably that was my grades, and that's why I'm not a banker, because I was partying too much. Yeah, that's my take.
Super. Thank you very much, Darren. Guys, if there's one takeaway that you leave with, it is to attend my events. So we conclude the panel discussion piece of today's evening, and we move to Q&A. What I'll ask you guys to do is, when you're asking a question, 4 things: state your name, where you work, which one of our eminent panelists you want to address the question to, and then your question, of course. We have a few volunteers who are helping us out. There's Will, there's Joe, there's Lotte who'll bring the mic to you. Just raise your hand and we'll come to you. Floor is open for questions.
Hello everyone, so my name is Andrea Gentini from CSSF, so the regulator. Two questions basically coming from Robert's statement, the first and the last one. The first one you talk about inflation. And in relation to inflation, my question is, what about to increase the productivity in the financial sector mainly? Because if you increase the productivity, you don't fear increase in salary, while you do not, because you don't increase price stress that you mentioned. And the second question is in relation to, let's say, retention, young generation, homework. But by the way, you said that young people should read at least 6-8 hours per week. I fully agree. But how young people can feed and can increase their professional expertise working from home? So how we can feed the professional expertise, the skills, empower their competence if young people work from home because it's nice? We have seen during the pandemic that homeschooling in all countries that they tried was not sufficient. At the end, the school ratings of kids, and especially teenagers, that spend the final years of their, let's say, before graduation, high school, doing homeschool, but they had bad scoring compared to the previous generation. So technically, indeed, we have to look at the reality. But the reality, not only the short-term reality, but even the medium and long-term reality. And the question is not for you, basically, but can be addressed to everyone.
In terms of the second point first, I'm fully on board with you. Like, personally, I am a very, very strong advocate of the workplace. I think it's the supreme learning environment. I think having proximity to senior leadership, having on-hand coaching, being able to absorb not just the communication that's being said to you, but the body language, you know, getting those reactions, I think that's indispensable. My personal views on that matter are there is no replacement for the workplace. Now that said, and I think it's been mentioned on this panel, we will, of course, have to concede to some extent of remote working. On that topic, I think we need to be looking at ways that we can collaborate in a more meaningful way. So collaborative technologies, ways in which we can push education through. You know, we've seen the rise of Microsoft Teams and other similar applications. So I think that definitely plays a key role. But for me, I'm fully aligned with you. I'm a strong advocate of the workplace. Maybe just to get this, the first question, fully agree. So we need to constantly be reassessing how we do what we do, and can we do it in a more effective, more efficient way? Can we be more valuable? That has to be the case. The challenge there is, our competitors are not significantly less intelligent than us. So a similar project will be undertaken in Dublin, in the Netherlands, in London, in Frankfurt, in Paris. A lot of the technologies that are available to us are available to them. A lot of the offshore talent hubs that are available to us are available to them. We need to be clever on that. That has to be a part of the solution. But I think, cost of living, salary costs, it is an inevitable challenge. It is a topic on the blackboard that we need to somehow address. Francesca, you have your thoughts?
Can I also reply to your points? I agree with you. So when we discuss about flexible work doesn't mean that you work from home or 5 days per week. I'm completely against. I also think that the senior management has to go to the office. So and also that home working is a benefit, is not a right. So, and we need to establish some guidelines and some rules. So there is a possibility, but the challenge we have is that between 5 days and 1 day maximum, and not in all companies, there is a discrepancy. Second point concerning the productivity, I agree. And this is something on which we have to work. We need to invest in technology and so on. But our business, per definition, in a management company, is not so scalable. So, I mean, even if you have a system controlling or performing some controls, finally, you need a brain who understands the result and analyzes eventual warnings. First point. And also what we see, in particular with the white label business, is that people now are asking more and more for ad hoc products. So the business is not scalable.
My name is Ajit and I work for Fidelity International. So my question is probably not about tomorrow, a little bit longer period actually. So like Darren, you mentioned people come here in the middle age with their roots. So like taking my example, I have a son who probably right now, he's around 11. In next few years, he will be looking for higher studies. The way I see it is, for higher studies, most likely he will be going out of Luxembourg. And once he's out of Luxembourg, how I can bring it back? It's very difficult. Where we are right now, I don't see, even though we will have a house, we may not have a cost of living crisis here for him, but I don't see him coming back. What can the industry, government, or other associations can do to keep those, like you mentioned, the roots back in Luxembourg rather than going out of Luxembourg?
Yeah, it's a superb question because, of course, we've not even thought about the levers from Luxembourg. We talk about the levers from companies internally, but the levers from Luxembourg. So it's a very valuable question. And I mean, just to pick up, I just wanted to make a comment on the homeschooling because, of course, it didn't work. And I remember, setting up my desk, setting up my son's desk, and I opened all his books and I realised I don't speak any of these bloody languages. He did not do well, I tell you now. The answer, what is the answer to this? I don't have the answer of what is going to attract people back to Luxembourg once they leave. I see my son, he's 13. He has strong roots here. He didn't go to the international school, so I was fortunate that he was born here, so he's gone to the local system. So in essence, he's a Luxembourger more than he is a Brit. My wife's British as well. So I think that he probably will have stronger roots because of that. Those that are going to international schools, was your son in an international?
He's in a local school.
And local as well, yeah. Does somebody else have any examples?
I'll give you an example.
I'm going to pass this over.
I don't have any answer, but I've got an example. I've got an example because I've only moved 8 months ago, as I said before, so it was quite a hard move in terms of family and everything. So I think we covered all the points that need to be addressed in terms of infrastructure, housing, education. But there's definitely the individuals in my company that they were actually born here, British parents, experts, went back to the UK and did their university there, did their studies, but then they came back here. They find this place quite attractive, and what they tend to do, they normally do some work experience first in Paris, London, some of the main centres, But they do see a lot of investment in this market, particularly in the financial services, and they do see the opportunity of working in a place which is moving at pace. It's quite exciting. I mean, you mentioned before the market is quite small, so you can get your network quite quickly. So there are some things that we can play. It's not all done. I mean, I've got probably 2 or 3 examples, it's not many. But it is happening. There's definitely more people wanting to come back, and we need to think collectively what we can do more to make them come back. And I think having people, different nationalities, having company keeping investing in Luxembourg, that we all do around this table, I think that's definitely a good message for the generation that are leaving and give them a reason to return. So I think it's work in progress, but there are some good signs of making them want to come back.
Hi, thank you speakers for a wonderful panel. I'm sure all of us had a food or two for thought. I have a question around, by the way, my name is Kira Gauthier, I'm the CEO of a company called Notcom. I have a question around health. So, pandemic put health and well-being in the spotlight. So now as we sort of return to the norm or whatever the new norm might look like, how do you think about designing health and well-being framework in your organization as a foundation for performance?
I've got a microphone, just saving things on my side, pass over. I think well-being has always been part of our, let's say, plans and strategy over the past few years. It has become even more important, as you said, after the pandemic. I mean, one of the things that, is not a surprise, I'm probably stating the obvious, but well-being is very different for different people. So when you're trying to compartmentalize and make, box it into 2 or 3 initiatives, it doesn't really work. So what works with us is we trying to create flexible solution and customize it for different individuals. For someone, well-being means doing sport. For someone else, it's flexible working. For someone, is going to a social. So it is very different for different employees. And when you have a big corporation, then you need to try and cater for all. So what we're trying to do is try and get feedback. That's always the best way to improve. Get feedback from the people. And trying to narrow down the initiative that we could do, but we had to expand from the regional view that we have because everyone has got different needs in terms of what really works for them. So a bit of flexibility, I thought it was key.
But same in our case, because there are different expectations. So this is something which has been discussed at the level of the company, and what we did is we created different groups, sportive one. We sport together, social events, depending to the expectation of the people. But this is something which we created now. You are right. We did not have in place in the past.
Well, I certainly agree with that. Like what I think was really impactful from the pandemic, and I hope we don't lose it. I would generally say, and I won't get into great details, but the pandemic entirely changed my life for the better. Now, obviously, I don't take joy in saying that because I appreciate many suffered terribly. But for my own personal life, my family life, it was transformational. And I think what I enjoyed seeing amongst all of my colleagues is it really lifted the lid on family life and humanity, in that I hadn't previously been in the middle of a board meeting and seen one of my clients' 4-year-old sons run into the room with no trousers on. That was a new experience, and all of us have kind of experienced this. What I think we were gifted from the pandemic is this reminder of the fact that we all have lives outside of boardrooms, and just offering a little bit of space for exactly that. Like, I agree with you, the solution, I don't believe the solution are running clubs and movie clubs and badminton clubs. They're wonderful things, and all credit to people who launched those initiatives. We have a number of such initiatives, but I think the silver bullet on this one is leading with empathy and giving people enough space for them to manage their own lives. I don't enjoy the, let's say, extreme paternal view that some people take on this, i.e. I'm going to wade into your personal life and I'm going to fix it for you. I don't think that that's a solution. I think it's allowing people to have the space and understanding to seek the well-being that they want.
Hi, my name is Jonas Vanderskjöld, and I literally put my feet on the ground in Luxembourg only 1.5 weeks ago after 10 years around Asia. And I thought I want to share a little bit another perspective, because there's a little bit negative mood around Luxembourg. And I think really what the key for Luxembourg going forward is to play the strength, because the work-life balance is going to be much more important for future generations. And there I think Luxembourg has an enormous strength to play. The geographic location, the relative easiness in terms of commute, sitting 1.5 or standing 1.5 hour in subway in Seoul, is nothing compared to moving around in Luxembourg. And I know some people commuting a little longer. So I think the key, my recommendation would be to play the strength for Luxembourg, and there are a few of them, rather than trying to get up and outbeat others, because everybody has the strengths. That would be my recommendation. What is the, maybe not the question, but maybe a contrarian thoughts.
I think it's very interesting. Like, I suppose I feel a bit bad now that anyone would interpret our thoughts as being negative. You know, I'm certainly incredibly positive on Luxembourg and have always been. I've been here for 18 years. I think we've got a wonderful ecosystem. What I would say generally about this forum and many others, it's almost like, I don't know if anyone's a boxing fan, and if they know much about Philadelphia boxers. Boxers in Philadelphia fight their best fights in the gym. That's why you will very rarely beat a boxer from Philadelphia when you get him in the ring. Because when they're dealing internally, they really expose themselves. So you know that when actual competition comes, you're ready for it. And I suppose maybe that's a little bit the explanation of, you know, today's quite challenging comments that we make about ourselves. We want to know that we've challenged ourselves, so when it comes to competing on an international stage, we've got the answers for the questions that our competitors may wish to pose.
Thank you, Prash. Good evening, everyone. I'm Emanuele and I work for Amazon. We did start by saying that we have the unemployment level at the lowest in the EU, but at the same time, we are also saying that by the end of the year, we will be in recession. How do you think, and we have some signs coming from the tech industry across the ocean that there are some layoffs, do you think that's going to impact the industry here as well, specifically the finance industry, and speaking with all the companies that are represented in this room, do you think it's going to impact the workforce here as well? And if it does, then how can that be an opportunity? Or if it doesn't, then how can that be an opportunity for us to attract people? If it, then how we are going to deal with this? Because we're talking about strengths, giving them all the points that we made. At the end, people leave their home and come to a country like this with not the, with having even a slightest possibility that you might be laid off in a year or two. And how can they be attracting people to this part of the country, all the way from their home countries?
I can give you like a very specific example of what we do at our group. So clearly our competitors are external, but are also internal. So as a country CEO, I compete with a lot of other countries within HSBC. So this is exactly one of the things that I use. The group managed to recognize Luxembourg as an investment center, and we're investing money, we're growing the business, and it's becoming attractive. So whilst that's an important message for the market, for me it's even more important internally. Because the workforce that we have, by selling the store internally, we can attract quite a lot of people from other markets. So Luxembourg becomes attractive to the internal population of HSBC. I mean, in the last 2-3 months, I managed to have 20 people that joined from our internal network from places like Oman, Asia, other countries in Europe, because they see the growth in Luxembourg and potentially a lower impact on the workforce in the near future. So that's definitely an advantage that I'm playing quite a role internally.
I'm not sure though if I remember all the introductory comments that I'm supposed to make. My name is Philippe Roche. I'm working at an engineering company here in Luxembourg. I'm also the president of the INSEAD Alumni Association in Luxembourg. So very thanks a lot for this beautiful logo on here and for being able to participate to the discussion. I'm born in Luxembourg. I left for a little bit more than a decade, and now it's another decade ago that I returned to Luxembourg. So I found it very interesting, the comments you made, the views that you brought up, and quite some of them are actually addressed to policymakers. And for those who have been around in 2014, there had been a push to increase the influence on our politicians by opening up voting rights, because in the end, policymakers, politicians, they please to their electorate, and that has been pushed back. So it stayed as it is, and that's not an exception if we look at other countries. Nevertheless, I think for Luxembourg, the scales are quite significant in terms of population. So in that respect, and not to any particular panelist, but I'd be interested to understand if you feel that non-nationals have enough ways to influence policymakers towards the things you just said, I think the very relevant things, and if not, how would things be different? Would that be the case?
Yeah, it's a relevant topic. I'm getting approached at the moment by quite a few politicians, because I sit on the British Luxembourg Society and the British Chamber of Commerce, and they're keen for the vote. They're keen for the local communal vote, and also for the national vote later next year. And they want, the foreign vote. And I think that even those that are eligible to vote, there's only about 20% actually do vote. And when I, sort of randomly asked a few people in the society and in the Chamber of Commerce, why is it that you don't vote? They just didn't really have an understanding of the politics. They didn't understand what the parties represented. They've not really taken an interest. And I think that this is going to change, I think, in the next, now that at least immediately we can vote, or at least what you've got to be here now, 50 days or something. What is there's a requirement that you only have to be here about a month or two that you can vote in the communal elections. So I think that might change. And as I say, I think there is an appetite from a lot of the politicians to win the foreign vote. So I think we are going to see more people out there. But I think it's just having an understanding of the politics here. But we don't know what party stands for what. I can guess what the Grain Party stands for, but the rest, we don't know as foreigners. We need to educate ourselves, I know, but of course, we only read usually in our native language, and I'm not looking at the foreign press where politics is discussed all the time. I think that goes for a lot of my British friends as well.
Even if you don't vote, and it's my case because I'm still waiting for 2 papers from Italy since months now. And by the way, we started the procedure at the same time with my husband, with my kids. They are Luxembourg, I'm still not. But this is not because of Luxembourg. I think that the other way to discuss and to share our opinion with the politics. So don't forget that our Minister of Finance, for example, doesn't stop to discuss with the different companies. She really wanted to get our feedback in order how she can improve things. The same for the Prime Minister. So there are many discussions around which probably don't see, even if we don't directly vote.
No, I would agree with that. I think, we have to be fair and balanced. I think Luxembourg has been tremendously welcoming to the entire international community, be it the financial sector, be it individuals. The level of adaptation that has been initiated in many walks of life has been exemplary. I think we all have a responsibility for crafting communities. I don't think that the social outcomes we spoke about this evening are exclusively the responsibility of politicians. We all have a responsibility for cultivating our communities. In terms of the vote, I think it's relatively open in that if you apply for citizenship and it is open, you can achieve citizenship and you can vote. I think that's maybe a good thing. I don't have any real objections to that, but I think it's for the international community really to ensure that we invest in these communities, like things like this, or school boards, or charity boards, or items like that. So I don't have a negative outlook on that personally, but thank you.
Cool. As someone who just got recently naturalized as a citizen, I completely endorse that. Well, Q&A can continue at the bar, guys. I guess our panelists will still be around. We'll move on to the networking session, but first, just a few quick tidbits of information. We explored a lot of themes today, and we continue to build upon those themes in our next panel discussion, which will happen on the 28th of February. You guys are all on our mailing list. You will get an official invite to that. I'll also post about it on the Luxembourg Tomorrow page. A fair bit of appreciation has to go around for making everything happen here today. Firstly, thank you to the panel for taking out the time to share your thoughts and ideas with us. Very, very appreciated.